How you doing, guys? Just like to welcome you to the second day of Zero Waste Festival Ireland in the Science Gallery. We are having our first of our speakers now, who is Íde Mhic Gabhann. She's going to be giving you a quick run through over the next 45 minutes, not that quick, on Zero Waste 101, how you can become zero waste, and her own journey over the past 4 years of how she's actually become a leading member of the zero waste community in Ireland. I'd just like to just quickly remind you the fire exits are at the back and the doors you came in, and here to my right on your left hand side. And could you just please turn off your phones during the talk? There will be time for questions at the end, so if you have any questions there will be a microphone going around just to help you be heard. And there will be questions during it, I've been told now as well. Okay, Germila. So Íde Mhic Gabhann.
Yeah. Oh no, sorry. Hi, so I'm Íde, and so yeah, I'll be taking questions at any time during it, so just put up your hand and a volunteer has a microphone and they'll come to you, and then you can ask a question. So just who I am, I suppose, to start off. I am a teacher, just because like sometimes with zero waste, it's like you get the impression that these people are housewives and they don't work and they have all this time and unlimited money and things like that to be doing all the zero waste stuff. So I'm a teacher who obviously, a maths teacher who doesn't take myself very seriously. And I love to travel, which is kind of relevant in the money department as well, because I've just recently come back from taking 7 months off. Another benefit of zero waste is that you spend way less money, so you can afford to do things like that. And I have a lot of support from my husband, so that's Kieran up there in the photo. Which, yeah, like, because I know, you know, everyone's in a different situation, so you know, you might have responsibilities or, you know, kids who are not willing to give up their Nutella. So I understand that everything that's in this presentation today mightn't be for you. It's like you pick and choose and decide what you're able to do in your own situation. And the other thing about me is I like to kind of get out and do things. And I like to talk about it on Instagram as well. I find it keeps me accountable, because if you say something, then you kind of have to follow through if you've said it in social media. Basically, if you were just, you know, if this was a one-slide show, it would just be consume less. Here we are litter picking, which is obviously an important thing to do, and you should still do it. And it has lots of benefits because you meet other like-minded people. It's pretty informative because you can see, we were in Africa for that 6 months that I took off, and when we were on the coast, we picked up a lot of, like, you know, you could see what the litter was. There was a lot of toothbrushes, and there was a lot of little pieces of fishing nets. So it's, you know, when you go litter picking, you can kind of figure out what's, you know, where the problem areas lie. So definitely keep litter picking if you're doing it. It's also great to meet other like-minded people. It also makes you feel good because you're actually taking action. So there's definitely a lot of benefits to it, but it's not really enough to be cleaning up afterwards. We need to look at the beginning and just consume less. So basically that idea has been going around since we started over-consuming, and then when, you know, zero waste, the term, came about for personal, you know, people at home using zero waste. It was Bea Johnson who kind of came up with it, not photoed here, these are Irish people, and she came up with 5 R's, just kind of to help you to consume less, basically, because obviously you can't just stop consuming completely. So she came up with the 5 R's, which are refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot. So just a catchy 5R thing, which I'm going to talk about later. But before I do that, I just want to go through some ideas to think about before you start going through the different phases. So the most important thing, I suppose, when you're starting out is to kind of figure out why you're doing it, because if you're really motivated and you have a good reason, then it'll be much easier to stick with. If you're just kind of not really sure why you're doing it, then it's going to be much easier for you to give up and, you know, for you to to get, carried away. So my own personal story is that I traveled a lot. So, after college, I moved to Mexico. Then I moved back from Mexico. Then at one point, I tried to move to Australia, but I got sidetracked and ended up in New Zealand. And then, I was coming back from New Zealand. And then eventually, my last move was to Colombia. And in 2016, I knew I was going to be coming back from Colombia at some point, and the original plan was to go traveling for a few months on my way back. So I thought I'd be moving back from Colombia after 2 years with a backpack. So I also knew that when I was, going to Mexico and coming back from Mexico and going to Australia and coming back from New Zealand, that I had disposed of a lot of things. I hadn't thrown a lot of things in the bin. I'd thrown too much stuff in the bin, but I just kind of given away or charity shopped or whatever. Just loads of stuff, like tech stuff, homeware stuff, like clothes, everything. I'd build up loads of stuff and then I'd need to get rid of it. So in 2016, I said, right, I'm not going to do that again. So I was like, I'm going to be moving halfway through the year, so I'm just going to stop buying stuff now. So clothes, gadgets, homewares, things like that, I wanted to stop buying them. And I also knew that I was going to compensate with stuff that's kind of semi-disposable. So if I was buying tissues, like I know previously while I was in Colombia, I bought a packet of tissues and it came with a nice little cute tin, or like 3 packets of Maltesers in a cute tin because, the tins were cute. So I knew that I would, if I wasn't allowed to buy clothes and gadgets and things like that, I knew that I'd still buy stuff and I'd still end up with stuff and it would still be wasteful. So I decided that I was going to try and buy all my consumables in as little packaging as possible. So I'd never even heard of zero waste. I just accidentally kind of aligned myself with it before I'd heard about the term. And then I started blogging about it. I was like calling it my Buy Nothing New Year. So I was blogging about it, and then friends told me, oh, hey, you might like these people, or, this is what it is. So that's my own personal story. It's not like everyone else's. I've heard a lot of people, they start when they have kids and they see the nappies building up in the bin, and then that kind of triggers them. So there's lots of different reasons to start. But as long as you know what your reasoning is and you keep that in mind, it will help you kind of stick with it. So that's what you need to do before you start thinking about how you're going to implement it, is just to have a good reason. The other thing to think about before you start, going through your steps, is to not just think about the stuff you have when you have it, like, you buy it and you throw it out, or, in between, but to think, where's your stuff coming from? So say a phone, it's not a disposable item, so you mightn't really think about it, but in the beginning it had to come from somewhere. All those materials had to be mined, or, if it's made from recycled material, that's kind of what you're aiming for, is the least impact in making the products you're using. And then at the end of the product's life, or then use it as much as you can, keep, repair it if you can, just try and make the most out of it while you have it. And then at the end of its life, you kind of have to think, where is this going to end up? And then make your decisions based on something that has the least impact in being manufactured and will have the least impact when it's being thrown out. So you kind of have to think about the three phases that you have, that the product will have, while, because you're responsible for it, it was made for you, so you have to think about it. The last thing I want to say before I go into the 5 R's is not to get sucked in. So it was easy for me because I started with a Buy Nothing New Year. So I didn't go out and buy a coffee cup and a water bottle and everything else, because I wasn't buying anything that year. But then 2017 rolled around and I did buy a few things. But you don't need any of the zero waste gadgets. The info stand upstairs, I was putting the stuff together for that. all the different swaps you can have. And there's actually only 3 things on that table that I actually bought. Like there's about half of the stuff belongs to me, but like some of it I got for free, like on Free Cycle, or just, it's a jam jar. It didn't get purchased. But the only things I've bought there were the cloth tea bags, some produce bags, which you don't even need. I mean, you don't need tea bags, you don't need produce bags. You don't actually need any one thing. You know what you need yourself, but just because all the other zero wasters have a stainless steel straw doesn't mean you need one. You decide what you need yourself. So before you start, going through the process of like trying to live more sustainably, don't buy anything, or don't think about buying anything until you've kind of established what are the things that you actually will personally need yourself. So it might look like, to buy food package free, you need produce bags, but actually you probably have a drawer full of plastic bags at home, and then, eventually those plastic bags are going to, wear out and break, but for the moment, you can just go through those, so there's no need to run out and buy anything. So to the actual 5 R's themselves. So the first one is refuse. So it's like, it's obviously not you're obviously going to have to consume some things, but there's a lot of stuff out there that you don't actually need. So this is stuff that you didn't want anyway, like junk mail and like leaflets and business cards and free pens and straws. So this is actually, I was in a cafe and I spent ages like confirming with them because I'd seen plastic cups downstairs for the smoothies, and I spent ages making sure that I was going to get my smoothie in a glass, and I forgot to say, and also no straw. So, you'll still end up with stuff, but you just try your best to refuse things. So that's the stuff you didn't actually want. And then there's other nice stuff, like things that you didn't ask for, but they're nice, and you're like, oh, that's nice. So this is us on a run, and everyone on the run got the same T-shirt, and we all wore the same T-shirt for the run, and it was lovely, but I never wore that T-shirt again. That was not the second run I did, and I had a T-shirt for my first run, but actually I got the wrong size in the first run, so actually Kieran wears that T-shirt, or he wore it for a while anyway. But then if you keep doing these runs, then you keep on ending up with more T-shirts. So, they're nice, and it's nice to have matching stuff, and it was like really nice that everyone was running together in the same T-shirt, but it's not really necessary. And like if we apply that to everything, we just end up with way too much stuff. So now, if I want to run a race, I email them and ask them, can I opt out of the T-shirt, or can I opt out of whatever they're giving away for free? Or I mainly do park runs, and then, they don't give you anything for free. So you can refuse nice things too. And then the hardest one is to start refusing things that you really like and you paid for and you get on purpose. So I don't know, it's kind of not a great photo, but I used to get an everlasting manicure every 2 weeks. So not everlasting, but everlasting in that it's basically made of plastic. So the most common brand name is shellac, if someone doesn't know what I'm talking about. And basically I was putting plastic on my nails, and it was really pretty, and I really liked it, and it didn't chip, and it was great. But you have to start thinking about how important that is to your life. And that's not to say that you can't be here if you get shellac. You can you decide yourself what are the things that you're willing to give up. And for me, that was something that I could give up, that I just moved on and, made different choices. So refuse is where you can have the biggest impact, because you're literally consuming 0 of that product. But then there's some things that you still do need to get and buy. So of those things, you just cut down, basically. So actually, I'm going to go back to that slide because I want to point out. I put this last picture in this morning, and I was looking at it and I'm like, oh, can I change the color of my top in the picture so it matches my scarf? Because it really kind of doesn't sit well with me. But now I never have to worry about things like that, because now I have way, way, way less clothes, and I never end up with like unmatching clothes, because all my clothes basically match now. So that's another benefit of zero waste or of cutting down or living more sustainably, is that it makes your life easier. You don't have to, when you have less stuff, it makes it easier to decide what you're wearing in the morning. It makes it easier to pack for a weekend away. You just throw things in the bag and everything is just matching and easier. So there's all these unseen benefits as well, which is the thing that really surprised me. So anyway, if you do have to buy stuff, obviously you're going to need some clothes. You can't refuse all clothes. You just try and cut down on the amount that you need. So by having less of stuff, by choosing things that are more versatile. So I was never big into beauty regimes or whatever. So I never had hand cream and foot cream, and well, I did at some point, but I was not a consistent user of different creams for different places, and night cream and day cream, and change for the summer and different for the winter. It was never a big deal for me. But now I just use basically coconut oil for any kind of moisturizing, and then also you can use it for making toothpaste. You can use it for loads of other different things. So just kind of cut down on the amount of different things you buy and try and buy things that are more versatile. And that counts for appliances as well. I guess you might have had a timer for your cooker, but you can just use your phone for that. There's a lot of things that you don't need to own. So kind of cut down on the amount of gadgets and stuff you have as well. And then some things you don't need to own at all. You might be able to just borrow something. If you don't need a car that much, you can rent cars or use go-kart. If you don't need a bike that much, you can use Dublin bikes. I mean, if you're in the city centre, obviously this is dependent on what you're doing. Obviously, some people do need a car to get to work and things like that. So it's all kind of just, there's little things in your own life that you could, if you're not using it a lot, you're like, maybe I can, sell that and then just borrow it when I need it. Or at the same time, there's stuff that you might want to keep, but you can lend out to other people when you're not using as well. So it kind of works both ways, and you still get the points for consuming less if you're lending it to other people. So just basically, cut down on the stuff that you do need to buy. And then when you do have something, you want to kind of keep it in the system and use it as much as possible. So there's the basics, your packaging. If you get your shopping in reusable bags, or you use a jar to do your bulk shopping, then you're reusing that. That kind of those plastic containers are actually secondhand. So if you're buying something secondhand, you're reusing it. You're keeping it in use for longer. And then there's stuff that like old tea towels or old clothes, which you think you can't use it anymore. It's it's past its purpose. You can find something else to make it into. So that's the cloths that I'd use to clean my bathroom. So the bottom two obviously used to be a tea towel, and the top one used to be a t-shirt. So you just kind of keep using stuff and try and keep it from going into the bin by finding another purpose for it. And then just kind of look after your stuff. So I'm not always this organized, but this one time I got my summer shoes reheeled in the autumn before I put them away. So I have my shoes reheeled, and they're cleaned and they're ready to put away. So if you clean your stuff and you keep it in good order, it's going to last longer. And those pink shoes have come back in fashion because I saw them in H&M last year. So I bought them in 2010. So, just keep your stuff clean, keep it in good shape, repair it when it breaks, and then you're basically keeping it in the system. So they're the most important three to just refuse, basically, because that's the most impact. reduce, because the less stuff you buy, like the less impact it makes. And then when you do have to buy something, just use it as much as possible. But then, you know, sometimes things break, and you have to, you know, you have to get rid of it. You have to dispose of it. So that's where recycle comes in. And I haven't put anything into my presentation about, you know, what to put in your recycling bin, but if anyone is confused about that, you can ask now or at the end. But I figured, like, a lot of the people here, I mean, you've come here on a Sunday, you've decided to be here, so you already have, like, you know, you're already thinking about it. So, but there is, like, kind of a further element to recycling. So for me, it's pens, things that end up on my classroom floor. So they can't go in the recycling bin. And there's lots of other harder things to recycle, things that don't get collected from your house. You know, it's very easy to put the recycling where it goes, but like things like batteries, light bulbs, lots of different things. So whatever it is that you're producing that can be recycled but isn't easily recycled, just like start thinking about that. So I looked up where to send pens, and TerraCycle does have a program, but it's not operating in Ireland. But I'm just going to collect the pens, and then, you know, if I'm going to England, or, you know, I have family living in England, just, you know, give it to them to send into the recycling program. It's not perfect, and, you know, everyone doesn't need to do this, but that's just, I've only been in my job 3 weeks, and that's the amount of, they take pens, highlighters, Tipp-Ex, and markers, and that's the amount that basically ended up on my floor. I didn't even, you know, I haven't even got to the stage of telling kids. I told one class, you know, if you have wasted pens or whatever, to put them in there, but that's, you know, so obviously I'm going to build up a lot of that, so it's worth my while to invest in recycling them. So there's the hard stuff to recycle, and then there's also another thing to note about recycling is a lot of the recycling that we do is kind of wish cycling. We put it in the bin and we hope for the best. But what we need to start thinking about is working on it locally. So if you find programs, you'll see Precious Plastic are upstairs. So they want to start recycling in Dublin, making stuff here, you know, so that it's not being shipped halfway across the world and made into God knows what, if we're lucky. Because once you put it in your bin, you don't really know where it's going. You can only hope it's being recycled. And recycling is a business. That's why pens don't go into your normal recycling bin, is because they're a lot of effort to recycle. And the only reason TerraCycle is recycling them is because BIC is sponsoring that, because it's good for their image to say that they're being recycled. So you have to remember it's a business, and it's not they're not just going to, out of the goodness of their heart, take all your rubbish and sort it and make it into something new. So you have to make it as easy as possible for your stuff to end up not being incinerated or not being put in a dump or into the sea. So if there is like local programs where people are taking a product and recycling it locally, then try to support those programs. And the other thing is, because recycling is a business, if we're not buying recycled products, less stuff is going to be recycled. So we have to kind of be using this stuff at the end. So there's no point in recycling all the plastic bottles if we're not using products that are made out of recycled bottles. So there's lots of stuff out there that's made from recycled materials. So I would always try and buy you know, things that are made out of recycled materials, be it like clothing or their sponges, you know, just different things, so that that's less that is going to the dump in the end. Then the last or is the one that I'm least good at. I just mainly leave that to other people. So even though that looks like I'm big into it, it's actually, that's not even compost, that's manure. But even if you aren't good at composting, or, you know, every time you try, the bin gets really smelly, there's all kinds of different options to suit. Or if you live in an apartment, you're like, I can't compost, I live in an apartment, you can get worms if you are comfortable with that, or a bokashi bin. but you still need somewhere to get rid of the end compost. So a lot of the time when I haven't had access to a garden, which has been most like the last 6 or 7 years, I have collected the compost and kind of brought it somewhere else. So either brought it to family, or I know some people, if they have compost at work, would like bring it into work. And yeah, it's like a bit of effort, but your bin doesn't smell. That's actually one of the other good things about zero waste, is no more bin juice. I don't know if anyone is still suffering from that, but when I look back at the idea of, you know, you take the bag out of the bin and it's all disgusting underneath and you have to wash it, that doesn't happen anymore because you're segregating all your food waste immediately. So it's great if you do have a garden and you do have the skills to compost yourself, but if you don't, and you have a green bin, use your a brown bin, use your brown bin. A lot of people are in apartments and they don't have those facilities, so just look around and see where can you send your waste, and try and send it there, because, you know, it makes your life better because you've no bin juice, and it's also better for the environment. Another thing to think about in terms of that is probably not for like when you're starting out first, when you get a bit of confidence, is to compost when you're on the go. So I call it pocket mulching, which is a Simpsons reference that no one else gets, so I might have invented it, I might have misheard it or something. But I'd bring my compost home for my lunch, which sounds difficult, but if you're having your lunch in a lunchbox and then you just put, you know, your banana skin or whatever back into your lunchbox, that's no big deal and nobody notices that, and then you just put it in the compost when you go home. Another thing you can do is prioritize cafes that have composting facilities. So then you don't even have to take it home. You just you know that restaurant, you'll be able to compost there, so it makes it easier for yourself. And another aspect of composting is to buy stuff, so utensils or things that you're going to use up, like toothbrushes, that are actually made of a material that at the end of their life can be composted. So like a toothbrush, you're only going to own it for a few months and then you're throwing it out, so better to get one that can be composted. But then even like furniture, it's going to have to go somewhere at the end, so if you are choosing a material that could go back to the earth, then that's still better than choosing stuff that, you know, is going to end up in the dump. So they're the 5 R's, and obviously the most important one, the biggest impact one, is refuse, but, you know, you can, as like I've said a few times, you can't refuse everything, so you kind of prioritize as you go down, and it's like worst case scenario, well, at least you can compost it. The important thing to remember, though, is that nothing looks perfect, you know, or this lifestyle doesn't look perfect. Well, it might look perfect on Instagram, but you're not seeing the full picture there. If you want to be really sustainable, things are going to get a little bit messy. And also, you can't always make every single decision that's exactly in line with your values. For example, those runners up there, they're the Parley for the Ocean Adidas runners. So they're made of recycled plastic bottles. So I'm like, great, recycled plastic bottles. I want to support this. But they're also made of wool, which I don't want to support. So you have to kind of compromise and say, well, you're trying to do the best you can, and it's your decision what you want to prioritize. And you can change, like, you know, you could say, well, in this instance, I'll buy this, but like you might necessarily make the same decision next time. So it doesn't have to be perfect. And so you can't always make like the best decision, you just try your best. And like so that's like my like I'd just been for a run, and that's what I was wearing. So it's kind of a combination of like, so the sustainable runners, because I couldn't get them secondhand. Some of those socks and that sports bra are actually secondhand. I got the sports bra in a flea market and the socks from somebody who didn't want them. They had a 5-pack of hiking socks and they didn't want them. So it's not exactly like, ooh, the glamorous lifestyle. It's like secondhand stuff. And then the other stuff is just really old. You know, it's just, I've had it for like longer than I have been living zero waste. So you just kind of use up what you have. So it's not gonna look perfect on Instagram or on like wherever you're posting your social media. You just have to kind of not focus on the image and kind of focus on what is the best solution. And then see that there on the other picture, so that's on your right. That was the view that greeted me when I went into my house. I moved this year, but like last year. And it's kind of my bin for other stuff that doesn't, like in the kitchen I had my recycling bin and a collection of glass bottles and my rubbish for going to landfill. But then just inside the door, this is other stuff that I was getting rid of. And I put it inside the doors to make it easier for me to, you know, transfer it out of the house. But it doesn't look pretty, it doesn't look perfect. So what you have there is like a box of like an old modem that I wanted to send back to the company. That plastic bag there, it's like a package from bread, but that's actually my collection of like worn out socks or whatever that's going into the clothes bank. So then when the bag got full, then I just bring it to the clothes bank, and then it's a jar that I had to give back to someone, and then that glass with the phone in it, that's like my wee waste, and I think the other one is my metal waste with like screws and nails and stuff, and then at the end it's like an unwanted gift. It's a pair of socks that I was just waiting to like give to a homeless person, like, you know. So if you put stuff at your front door, it doesn't look right, but at least then you see it every day and you know to take it with you, because if you hide it in a press in your kitchen, then you end up having it for months. So don't focus on the image, kind of focus on what you're doing, which will, you know, not look great, but it will have a bigger impact. The other thing to think about is keeping going. So if you're starting out and you're on your own and you don't know anyone else who's in the same situation, number one, like it's only your own ideas, and you mightn't think about, like when I started out and I didn't even know zero waste was a thing, so I was just basing it on my own ideas. But if you get involved with like organizations, or, you know, like I was saying earlier with the litter pick, or like volunteering at a festival, or, you know, meeting other like-minded people, then you get different ideas, and you learn about new things, and then you might also like learn about some hacks or easier things, or things to make it easier, or like what to focus on or what to do next. So that really helps you keep going. So definitely either online. When I started out, so I was living in Colombia, so I didn't know anybody else who was into the same kind of thing there. But as soon as I started blogging about it, a friend from home said, oh, hey, we've just started that. They just had a baby, and they said, oh, we've just started that too. So then I had that kind of online link, and then my brother added me to this Facebook group called Zero Waste Ireland, which had like 300 members at the time. Now it has like, I don't know, 15,000 members or something. So like there's people out there who you can talk to and ask your questions to. So online, and then even better when you actually know people in real life, you could just really help you to stay on track and to do new things and, you know, really move forward. So definitely try and get involved and like volunteer and come and do talks like this. It'll definitely help you along, because you can't really stand here and talk about this and then eat a Snickers on the way out of the room. So it really helps you stay on track. But an important thing to remember is that you don't have to do anything. So that is me last week, under 26 kilos of monkey nuts in Halloween packaging that myself and a friend got from a dumpster outside Tesco. So I have some upstairs if anybody wants some. They're not out of date until March. Like that is zero waste. It's like taking stuff out of the bin and, you know, using it. But not everyone here has to do that. You draw your own line. You decide what you want to do. Maybe like the feel of bamboo toothbrushes is kind of makes your mouth feel funny, or you're allergic to baking soda, so you can't have any of the natural deodorants. You can still like use normal deodorant. You can still use a plastic toothbrush. You can still do all those things. You decide what you are willing to do or what you can do in your own circumstances. Don't worry about what, you know, Instagram says you should be doing. You just make your own decisions yourself. In the summer when I was in Kenya, we were meeting up with people. We were going to go camping with them for the weekend, and so we were having dinner, and I was drinking a Coca-Cola product, and I was saying, you know, I just was like, you know, these were new people, and I was like, oh, I don't really want to buy packaged food for when we're camping together. So I just said, oh, hey, so we're zero waste, so if it's okay, can we, you know, get packaged, like we'll organize all the dry food because, you know, we want to get packaged free food, and then we'll go shopping on the way, and I know this place, blah, blah, blah. And the girl who was sitting next to me was like, but you can't be zero waste. Because, like, look what you're drinking. And I was like, oh, it's a reusable bottle, like, you know, they refill them. But she wasn't like, oh, you can't be zero waste. She was more like, I don't call myself zero waste because I don't live up to the standard that I think it is. So she wasn't calling herself zero waste. So she was like, oh, you're not zero waste because I'm not zero waste. But if you're trying, you can still call yourself zero waste. You don't have to produce zero waste because nobody is actually producing zero. You're just trying to do your best. And that's what makes you zero waste. I've since started boycotting Coca-Cola, so I no longer drink from even reusable glass bottles. So just really, like, you decide what you can do in your circumstances with your budget and your time and your responsibilities. And don't let anything else, you know, like social media or people tell you that you're not zero waste. You are if you're trying. And then the other thing to remember, because some people might be a little bit terrified now, is that it's a journey. So I said I was blogging when I did my Buy Nothing New Year. I was blogging on Weebly, which is terrible and stopped working, so I stopped blogging. That's when I kind of moved to Instagram. But so this kind of shows. This is me in March, so I'm like 3 months in, and it says, yeah, you know, the whole like toilet roll, tissues, kitchen towel. It's like, oh, well, I've given up kitchen towel, but I'm not going to give up tissues. Like handkerchiefs would just be like gross or whatever. I don't know if I actually say that, but I'm taking the big box of tissues, and I'm stuffing it into the old little packets for your pocket, and I'm like, that's good enough. And that is like, that, you know, that's great. You know, I was saving a whole lot of plastic by not buying the little 10 packs. But then this is August, and I've decided, oh, hey, my dad has all these handkerchiefs that he doesn't use anymore. I'm going to take them. So, and there's a whole lot of blank on the other side of the page because that's like 3.5 years ago. So, like, you know, the journey has continued, and I've cut out more stuff. So if you're sitting here thinking, well, I can't do any of those things, or I can't do most of those things, you don't just go overnight from, I know I said I had a Buy Nothing New Year, but I didn't just go from like consuming to not consuming anything anymore. It is a journey, and it is a slow process. And you kind of learn along the way what you can do without and what you can't do without. And there's still things that I don't, you know, I haven't got sorted out. And like, I'm gonna like give an example which might seem like really tiny to some of you, but like there's a lot of people, like I've known from Facebook for like 3 or 4 years that a lot of people, they get their hair cut at home so that they can compost the hair. And I'm like, that's cool, and that's something that you don't think about. And I've known about that for 3 years, but I just haven't had the organization. I'm not against it. I just haven't had the organization to find a hairdresser that will come to my house. And I know that if I did do that, my life would be easier because I also don't have the organization to go to the hairdresser often enough. And it would solve two problems for me, because like if I had something scheduled in, then that's one less thing that I need to think about. So zero waste makes your life better, but like you don't always have to have everything under control. So even though that would make my life better, I haven't done it myself yet. So definitely, you know, you don't have to do everything, and at some point in the future, I will be organized enough for that, and I'll be really happy because I'll never have to think about going to the hairdresser again. So definitely what you should take from this is that it makes your life easier, it makes your life cheaper, it makes your life better, makes you more organized, and it makes you happier. So I don't know if I was too like crazy with my examples there, but definitely go for it and go at your own pace. And if you have any questions, I will take them. Yeah, just does someone have a mic?
Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for the talk, really inspiring. There's one thing you've mentioned a little bit earlier, I think about 6-8 slides away. You mentioned how you could really inspire, kind of like you could really make a change by just going to restaurants which compost their food or maybe their coffee grounds. A lot of these decisions are also based on how much you want to research or have the time to research, or you know. So which are the restaurants or coffee shops that you recommend in the area?
So actually the Science Gallery Cafe has compost, and across the road in Camille, they have compost as well. And that's actually another big thing as well, is to support, not just for the composting, but support places that offer a discount for coffee cups, because then you're promoting it, a discount for lunch boxes, support places that have vegan options and things like that. Then you're kind of promoting a sustainable lifestyle, so definitely a good thing to do. But yeah, here and Camille anyway for a start.
Hi, you talked about avoiding wool, and I was just wondering why, considering it's a natural material.
Yes, so it is a natural material, but I also try and avoid new animal products, just from a sustainability point of view, because for me it's always a maths game, and you know, to grow, well, first of all I try and prioritize recycled, like even with clothing, recycled material, but for, you know, it's a biodiversity thing. Like the more land that we use for agriculture, and I don't know if making clothing is counted in that, but the more land we use for that, the less land that we have left for natural habitats. So for that reason, I'd avoid like leather and wool and any kind of animal products. But that's kind of a side. It's like when you're zero waste, you're not just zero waste, you're kind of all these other things as well. So.
Thank you so much. I have two questions. One is that I'm also an avid traveler and have been struggling with sort of the carbon footprint of taking planes, especially when like travel is becoming more and more affordable and therefore attractive. So I wondered if you've done anything or any thinking about sort of the impact of your traveling and how you might counteract that. And then my second question is just that I find it really challenging in Dublin to find places that sell non-packaged produce, like even like carrots or peppers or things like that. And I didn't know if there was a resource that I could look at to see where I might be able to go to get non-packaged foods.
Yep. Okay, so about travel, yeah, it's something I think about, and I would love to say I'll never fly again. But I don't want to. I'm not there yet. But so what I have decided is, so it's kind of a gradual process again. So first I was like, okay, only direct flights. And then, because most of the impact is on like takeoff and landing. So if you're taking 2 flights to get to somewhere in Europe, even though it turns out cheaper, it's just a lot worse for the environment. And then I was like, right, only flying somewhere for the weekend for a wedding. And now I don't think I have any more friends who are planning on getting married abroad, but I won't be going if I can't, because I'm a teacher, I can't just take my holidays whenever I like. So I wouldn't fly anywhere for the weekend anymore. I'd try and make it the trip as long as possible. And then, so we're just back from skiing. We went skiing at New Year, and we took the ferry and the train. So if you do have the time, definitely, there are ways to get around Europe, and that's really going to be my plan for traveling within Europe going forward, is to try and do it by ferry and train or bus as well. The bus is handy because you can get the bus overnight, so then you wake up in London. So, I'm not willing to give up completely, and it's really great that some people can, and I mean, I obviously can. There's no reason that I need to be traveling, but I enjoy traveling, so it's just kind of like I'm going to minimize it as much as possible. But it doesn't always work out. For example, when we went to Africa for 6 months, and one of the reasons why we went for so long was like, right, we've flown to Africa, so let's try and make the most out of it, because we may not be here again, because we want to, fly less. But on the way over, we'd booked a ferry, and then we'd booked a flight the next morning from Heathrow, and we got to Dublin Port, and it was very, very quiet. And we went up to the counter, and they were like, yeah, ferry's cancelled, there's a storm, we can put you on the next one. And I was like, well, will the next one get us to Holyhead in time for a train to London? And they said no. And we panicked, and we booked a flight. I mean, maybe we could have said, okay, we can get to Holyhead and then we can hitchhike, and maybe that's what I'll do next time I'm in that situation. But it's a process, and you try your best, and sometimes it doesn't work out, but you can definitely do little things to change your impact. And then even when you're on the flight, I always bring my own sleeping bag. And it's because I once flew with AirAsia, and they charge you for the blankets, and I realized a sleeping bag is way better. There's no drafts. So even tell your non-environmental friends, it's still better to just bring your own sleeping bag, because then the blanket stays in its plastic package, and hopefully it doesn't get thrown into the washing or whatever happens to the ones between flights. Order the vegan meal. Bring your own coffee cup, bring your own snacks if it's a short flight. There's all little things you can do. Bring your own water bottle through security, empty, obviously. So you just try your best with everything. And then in terms of package-free food in Dublin, talk to people, make friends, join a community. Online, the Zero Waste Ireland Facebook group, if you ask there, people will be able to help you. Or there's Zero Waste Dublin as well. And if you ask upstairs, some of the people selling soap and stuff, they might be able to tell you where they should. So talk to people here. It's easier to talk to vendors than to talk to other people. But if you're in a queue behind someone at the coffee place, you can always strike up a conversation there. But talk to people really is the best way to find out, because there is kind of a lot of half resources out, there, but there's no complete list yet. So, just look everywhere. Okay, thank you.
Thanks a million, Íde. That was really informative. Our next talk is starting at 2 o'clock. It's from a great environmental activist, Celia Somali, who is working on plastic in Dublin at the moment, and she's involved in a group called Precious Plastic. So she'll be going through global plastic productions and what we can do to deal with the plastic crisis. So if you can come back in at 2 o'clock, that would be great. Thank you. Íde Mhic Gabhann.